Hello, I'm Ed Rabyd, otherwise known as the Rabyd Atheist, a former pastor turned atheist, now compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Feel free to like or dislike the video as you see fit. So feel free to hit those buttons. Feel free to comment below, and I'd appreciate it if you had subscribed to the channel and hit your notification bell for more content as it is released. You're also free to share my videos as much as you like. The purpose of this channel is educational in regards to atheist and deconversion issues. And politics, theology, Bible, philosophy, and relationship to those issues. This show kind of takes the form of a podcast, and I just kind of talk. And today that's more and more evident because it's a Rabyd ramblings. Today I want to talk about, I guess, I don't know, now that the post-election fervor has kind of died down a bit, and I've listened to a lot of anti-religious, anti-theist kind of people like myself, do their war whoop of how they won. Against the Christian nationalist orange man, I look at things, I guess, a little bit differently. I don't know if I'm pessimistically or overly cynical, I guess, sometimes, because I look at things and I say, I'm not really sure about that. Now, there's a couple of great things, I think, from an atheist point of view that have happened in this country. Number one, recent surveys have shown a couple of things. Number one, overall America is becoming more and more secular. Now, by more and more secular, I mean the majority of Christians is smaller. Okay, now I want you to note what I said there. The Christian majority is smaller. Okay, it's not as big as it used to be. It doesn't mean that they're still not the majority. And so the idea that, there's still plenty of religious people in this country. They still constitute a majority of the United States. A lot of religious affiliation is none. That's grown to like 26, 27%. And that's significant because it used to be like 10, 15 at the most throughout the history of the country most of the time. And atheism has usually documented at about 2% of that. It's now up to about 6%, and agnostics make up about 7%. So if you're talking free thinkers who I would consider are atheistic in practicality, you're dealing with about 13% of the country. Now, I've heard a lot of atheists, get a little bit smug since Orange Man was deposed. And I'd like to point out that we have a long way to go. Number one, you didn't exactly elect an atheist to the White House to get rid of Orange Man. You elected a very interesting and almost very devout Catholic. And people want to sit there and say, oh, this is so much better because we don't have Christian nationalism. No, now you have Catholic internationalism. Some people will say, well, he's still pro-LGBTQ. He's still, he's not trying to take people's rights away simply because they have a different point of view, things like that. I would agree with that, except I also don't hear him talking about taxation of church. Even though I'm against it, a lot of atheists are for it, and they would consider that a victory if churches were suddenly taxed. You're never going to hear Biden talk that way. He's too much of a Catholic, and the church has enough grasp on him that the first discussion that, the moment you start talking about taxing the churches, the Pope's going to send a representative, if not come himself, to the United States and sit down and talk with Biden about it. Okay. You're also going to never see those pedophile priests prosecuted in a civil court. So is that really a victory? I'm not really sure. My thing about it is when you're still a minority group, you need to realize, especially when it comes to ideology, you're still in a position where you can suddenly see the majority turn things around. I'd like to remind my atheist brothers and sisters in the room that in this country's history, there have been two very dark times where the country was considered godless. Okay. One was in the 1600s, and we were still a British colony at that time. But in the 1600s, there was a time period where a lot of people were emigrating to what would become the United States. And they were coming here because of the freedom to do what they wanted to do. They didn't have to be stifled by religion. As much as we talk about the religious exodus of the Pilgrims and many other religious groups to the United States, There was also another group of people that were coming here because they just wanted a more tolerant society where you didn't have to deal with crap. The problem with the religious folks is they would look at those people and say, well, you're morally lax and so on and so forth. And a preacher by the name of Jonathan Edwards preached a message, sinners in the hands of an angry God, and all of a sudden everybody got really religious. The thing about religion and what makes it able to make such big comebacks as compared to, say, something like atheism is this. Religion appeals to emotion. It appeals to instinct. And emotion and instinct are bigger factors in most human decisions than rationality. They're bad decision makers, don't get me wrong, but they still factor more and more. The Second Great Awakening in this country took place after the American Revolution. Charles Finney was probably the most chief instigator of that one, where you create a lot of emotionalism, you create a lot of quote-unquote fervor, and people, doing what they do best in religion, which is do the whoop-whoop. And what you end up with then is a Second Great Awakening, which led to a holiness movement, which led to a lot of other things, which led eventually to prohibition and the temperance movements that definitely affected American society. So the idea that religion cannot suddenly make a comeback very quickly, I've studied too much history to realize that that's true. So what do you have to do when you're a minority group, such as atheism, and you see this kind of thing that you consider to be very damaging to society? Well, first of all, I think the first realization that I've had recently is we're a long way from winning the war. This war of acceptance, I guess, because even though, I'm guessing about 30 years ago, I could not have done a channel like this without somebody hunting me down. Atheism in the 80s, even as far as the 80s and the 70s, I would say was still looked and frowned upon. People, I'll consider, you don't have anybody in elected office, for instance, that was an open atheist. Even to today, we still don't. Why? Because people, for whatever reason, because most people are still inherently religious, they don't trust people that don't have a religion. And it seems odd to them. Okay, why wouldn't you have a religion? In fact, a lot of candidate profiles automatically have religion as a category that tell people what people's religion is before they're elected for political office. So my message to my fellow atheist brothers and sisters and out there is this. We haven't won anything, really. We won a battle. And I'm not even sure how significant it is when you go from one religious extremist group to another religious extremist group, in my opinion. The Roman Catholics are an international religion that are responsible for a lot of suffering around the world. And you don't have to take too long of a look at their history to realize they've always been kind of that way. The Catholic Church will preach against sin while all at the same time doing a bunch of it themselves and, giving themselves absolution. And that's kind of the real problem. So I don't know if we've really won anything. We've gotten rid of, somebody that's very sympathetic to Christian fundamentalism to somebody who's maybe a little bit more sympathetic to Catholic liberalism, but still, the Catholics have their way of digging their claws into international politics in such a way as to use religion to influence the outcome of events. And I'm going to tell you, that's very rarely positive. So I'm not really sure what we've won. Yes, I'm excited by the fact that people are more rationally considering faith and religion, and that's kind of dying down. But I'm also very cautiously, shall we say, skeptical, because I don't see religiosity dying anytime soon. What I do see is a couple younger generations that if they stay the course with their religious piece are going to get bigger and bigger, because they're not going to teach their kids this stuff, okay? The issue to me, the crux issue, is when Christians stop indoctrinating children and start letting children basically make this decision for themselves. Because at that point, you're going to see a lot of people go secular. Because when you really consider religion and you have all the tools to consider it, of being an adult, most of it becomes nonsense pretty quickly. It's funny how people of religions have dismissed every other religion as nonsense, but not their own. Okay. And somebody else in the other religion has dismissed their religion as nonsense, but not their own. An atheist has simply said, yeah, you're all nonsense. And that's kind of something that people somehow, for some reason, don't want to do. There's an inherent survival instinct in the group. And the one thing that religion is very good at doing is keeping groups. I talked about tribalism a couple of days ago, but tribalism's benefit, it has two benefits. One is it provides a sense of community, of unity. Maybe it's a false sense of unity, but it still does that. And the other thing is protection. Like it or not, we human beings have figured out, our chances of survival go up quite a bit if we stand back to back and point our spears at the enemy that's outside of us. The problem is sometimes the enemy has been our fellow human beings because they're different, or they don't believe as we do or think as we do, or they don't dress like we do. I mean, the different reasons for tribalism are legion. But I, as an atheist, have tried to make the human race my tribe. And that's a little bit different story, trying to figure out ways that our enemies are no longer each other. Okay. Well, that's not going to go away quickly. That's something that's going to take a while, and religion is going to definitely still be a part of it. I'm not really sure what the future holds for atheism, because I'm always skeptical of human behavior staying the course. Sure, there's this trend line, where atheism and free thinking is growing. But I also know that trend lines, because of events, can suddenly dramatically change, and not always for the better. The two great awakenings in this country remind me that every once in a while, things change dramatically, and the church can get the country can get really religious very quickly. And that's happened twice, and it can happen again. And you're thinking, well, with all the modernity and the internet and all this other stuff, I said, yeah, I get what you're saying. And I think we have a lot more buffers to that happening than in the past because of the internet, and because of information, and because of science and things like that. Because science works. The real problem with religion is it doesn't always work. And with science, when you get down to practical applications of science, science pretty much always works. Occasionally you'll run into something that wasn't really science, although it appeared to be. So I don't know. I'm skeptical. I guess I will feel a whole lot better someday. You can talk about the glass ceiling for women all you want. I prefer to talk about the atheist glass ceiling, which is even more difficult because I don't even think that we've had an atheist elected to much of anything. And so that's kind of an interesting phenomenon, because you have a majority of people that are theistic, that believe in some sort of God or supernatural power. Somebody who comes along and doesn't believe those things, doesn't believe them at all, seems like an odd duck to them. And I'm not really sure if we're ever going to overcome that, at least in my lifetime. I think it's going to take a little bit longer than even my life. But in the meantime, I'm not going to sit there and give out a whoop just because I won one battle. There's a long, long way to go yet. And I think that's the real crux to the matter, is that I want to say, yeah, great victory in some respects, but we're still in some places in the same place. We're still doing things that need to be rectified. All right. That's just kind of some of my kind of thoughts for today. I wanted to make this a short rambling. I guess I'm interested in hearing your thoughts about the future of where we're going as a group of people. Now, atheists really only have one thing in common, is that they don't believe in a supernatural deity, a God. But if you take a little broader context of free thinking and anti-theistic thinking, where are we headed here? Where is the future? I mean, if I felt that it was a done deal and a victory, I'd shut down my channel. But I don't think it is, because I think there's going to be tons more people that are still deconverted. There's tons more people that are still going to move forward with their lives and try to figure out whether religion is true. There's tons of people out there struggling with what belief is and all that other stuff. So I think that's something that we need to consider. This is just a message, I guess, asking, some of you free thinkers out there, what do you think is the future? What is the dangers of the future? And where do you think we're going? All right. With that, thanks for stopping by. I appreciate you coming by. Hopefully someday I can convince you to be a rabid atheist like myself. In the meantime, this is Ed Rabyd, also known as the Rabid Atheist, signing off and wishing you a good day.